Okay, welcome back to the Hockey Axe podcast. This is Mason Hackle. We're the podcast dedicated to learning the abilities of the best hockey players in the world, in addition to the best athletes in the world, and making a standardized system that is dissected from their exact abilities so that anybody can access what the best in the world do. So, what we're going to talk about this week, provided I don't run into any cars, is what exactly do we copy from the best players? This was the topic I wrote about in my blog or email newsletter, so you can go sign up for that if you'd like to stay up to date with different things. But I figured I'd do a speech along with it, kind of give two different perspectives in case I missed something. Anyway, what exactly is it that we copy from the best players? Because it's not a universal rule that everything that the best do is something that you should copy. And primarily it comes from this, is that if you're not the best, if you're not at that pinnacle, if you're not at the top, it makes no sense to do everything that they do, because that's the level that they're at. They're at a different level than you if you're not already at the top. You have to work your way up to that specific level. And so how do we do that with hockey training? Well, commonly, you see that many players will do the same drills, like skating around cones or skating around the rink, skating around obstacles, whatever. They take the same exact route. And that's been done in practices for quite a long time. Every type of practice that you can name. And that's been standard, you could call it that, even though I don't like to use that word in this specific context, but that's been universalized, it's been ubiquitous, it's been everywhere, in every single hockey practice, with every single coach, for, I would guess, as long as people have been practicing hockey. And so here's the thing that I've noticed out of something like that. You can get two players who do the same exact route of a drill, and yet both of them will move completely differently. Their movements, their mechanics, the way that they get from point A to point B, the way that they start and finish the specific drill, they will move completely differently. It is very likely that will happen. So this is the case, actually. Everywhere that you go, in every single practice, you're bringing two players together. Someone's going to move differently than the other. But it is most apparent when you put the best in the world next to someone who is not the best in the world. And here's a good example of that. I know a friend of Nathan MacKinnon and Sidney Crosby and Brad Marchand. They all practice together during the summers in Nova Scotia. And the story behind this player, Sean, is that he was trying to figure out how to move just like Nate and just like Sid and Marshy to an extent too, but mostly Sid and Nate, because their skating is on a different level. They were skating better overall, like faster, quicker, with more ease, able to sustain longer what looks like stamina, that they're able to do repetitive work for much longer. And he wasn't able to do that. And that showed in that he was at a AHL, ECHL level for most of his career. And then, Crosby and McKinnon, or Crosby and McKinnon. But then one day when he was working with Jason Yee at Trade 2.0, they were looking at Sean's cross-unders and Nate's cross-unders. The only thing that Jason did for his coaching was put both of their crosses exactly next to each other at the same time that they executed them. And what happened was Sean was, for the first time, able to see what he was not able to get for years in a blink of an eye, in seconds. And so I know I just said that you don't want to compare yourself to the best players, and then I'm comparing someone's movement with the best player on the planet right now, or one of the best. It's with McKinnon. But that is one of those areas where it does actually work, providing you get the context. So they would do the same drill with their crosses, right? Or with the routes that both of them would do, and they would move completely differently. Their cross-unders would be completely different from, Nate's crosses would be more ease, have more explosiveness, and then Odie's maybe would have a similar type of hop or gallop, but it wouldn't have the same, the movement would not be the same, like, at the end of the day. And then the speed generated would also not be the same. So that's an example of two players doing the same exact drill, and yet because their mechanics are different, the results end up being different within the drill. So it's not about copying other players' drills or other players' favorite drills. It's that in a case like that, if you are going to copy their drill, you want to copy how their exact, mechanics. Provided you match up your mechanics with the appropriate player. So that's another topic in of itself. But lock in that principle. And that's how you set the standards for specific movement training within hockey. Is that you want to look at your movement. You want to copy the movement. Not as much the specific joint angles, but the specific mechanics. Because that's another area that you don't want to obsess over. Maybe isn't the most productive. The joint angle conversation, I think it's too much in the weeds. Generally speaking, if you're able to get in a double shoulder width stance and get knee over toe, ankle to collapse to the floor, like you have those abilities, and you're also able to use the rocker effectively. Like, here's two different body types, or three, I should say, that all line up to fast skaters, fast players with great mechanics. You line up Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, and Matt Barzal. Barzal actually has shorter, stockier femurs than McDavid, who has longer, lankier femurs. And what happens with that? What happens with those specific biomechanics is that Barzal is able to squat lower with his chest staying up, whereas that is not the case with someone like McDavid. Just with the specific levers that their hips and femurs have affects their biomechanics slightly. If you make them both squat, like with some heel elevation, they're both going to get down all the way in a squat. But that's not the point. The The point is that there's a slight variation in their movement. Now, the overall mechanics, say like of the corkscrew, 10-2, outside edge, roll, shuffle, those are things that you could still copy from the best and have been dissected from the best. And those things are what you should copy, because every great player does some level of those mechanics. The pattern has been so consistent to this point. Studying tens of thousands of hours with these great players, that these different mechanics just pop up all the time. So it's not magic anymore. It's just mechanics. That's something that you can copy. Now, to tie in some other subjects that probably you would think about, would you copy their diets? I recently saw an Alex Ovechkin photo where he was eating Subway and Cheetos. That guy's a fucking legend, as people would say. And he is. Like, it's Alex Ovechkin. What more do you need to say about him? But would you copy his diet? This is the same thing with a guy like Chad Ochocinco, where he would consume a bunch of Big Macs all the time, apparently, rumor has it, and yet would still have a, 4% body fat. Maybe it was more like 8, but guy would be shredded. And yet, he was also the best in the world. Actually, Ovechkin has freaking Cokes on the bench, like Diet Cokes, or maybe it's not Diet Cokes, but he has Coca-Cola's on the bench. Like, would you copy that just because you want to be more like Alex Ovechkin? So it's like, I'm gonna do his same diet. Would you copy him when he was like apparently partying in Russia after he won the Stanley Cup and just, consuming every drink imaginable because he reached the pinnacle of hockey and wanted to like party loose, and just because like if you know about Russians, and then they like to party. Like the vast majority of them, let's say, like they know how to party for sure. Like this, talking through the grapevine of hockey culture. Like that's just how Russians are. But would you copy those players if you're trying to get better? You would actually do something more like Nate McKinnon's diet. If you're trying to feel your best, which would also help you perform your best, you would want to make your diet optimally make you feel best so that you could perform your best, because diet does affect your performance. There's no question about that. The foods that you eat affect your mood. That's been proven at this point. You can even try it out for yourself. Different foods are going to make you feel differently. Different diets, different elimination factors, you name it. The things that you put into your body, the things that you put on your body, all affect what you do. How you take care of your body is going to affect how you feel to a degree. So that's where you would have to do things a little bit differently. That's why you wouldn't copy an Ovechkin diet. You would have to make something that would end up working for you. And also, here's the other thing. You are not 100% like Alex Ovechkin. You're actually more like, you have 90%, you're able to get 90% of his abilities. Just like you're able to get 90% of Connor McDavid's abilities, just like you're able to get 90% of McKinnon's abilities. I would say that's pretty much the limit of how much you can copy with someone. Do I have any data to specifically say that it's 90% and not 92.5173%? No. It's meant to be directionally accurate, that you say it's 90% instead of some other number, just because we have that orienting reflex and we model those that we look up to as experts and people who are better than us. So that's what you should look at. What are those 80-20 things? What are those 90%? Let's say it's 90-10, maybe something else like that. You could even dial it down to like the one thing that you can match from each of the great players that you could also copy yourself, that by taking action on it makes everything else in your game easier or unnecessary. So we can go down the line. McDavid's cadence. That is something that everyone can copy. He is best in the world at cadence. McKinnon's gallop and his corkscrew, how often he gets wide, how often he gets to that 20-mile-an-hour speed burst. Like how many 20-mile-an-hour speed bursts he has per games. That is something you could copy. Sidney Crosby, how long he has puck possession for along the boards. That is also something you could copy. The specific 10-2 mechanic that he uses to protect the puck, that is also something you could copy. Alex Ovechkin's mechanics that allow him to set up his patented one-timer, that is also something you could copy. Elias Pettersson's mechanics with his shot, that is also something you could copy. Everything else that they do, maybe not something you have to worry about. So that would be your action item, is to find one thing from each of these different players that you can copy that by doing so makes everything else easier or unnecessary, and not everything else that they do. You would not copy their diet. You would not copy maybe their defensive game. You would not copy, I don't know, how they interact with fans or how they think. I don't copy those things. I just copy the abilities that I want from them. Heck, if they're not athletic, like a Cale Makar is not an athletic player, rumor has it, and like he's terrible in the gym, rumor has it, and same with Elias Pettersson, rumor has it, that should you be bad in the gym yourself because they are subsequently bad and they are the best players in the world at what they do? No, absolutely not. That doesn't mean that. Because let's say you have a weak link that can be taken care of inside of the gym. Say you have broken hips like I did. Would I still train my ass off doing everything that Cale Makar does? Or would I work on stuff that is specific to me? Just because I'm more athletic than Cale Makar is doesn't mean that I'm not doing everything I can to be more of the abilities that he's expressed, that I want to copy. I don't want to copy his lack of athleticism because that didn't produce the results for me. And you don't want to either. The odds are stacked against you when you remove athleticism from your repertoire and from your case of abilities. So that is something that you would not copy from someone like a Makar, the lack of athleticism. There's too many situations where individuals are different, that I suspect what's going on there is that it's a genetic case that he's been able to perform well despite his lacking athleticism. So I'm going to leave it at that. It's up to you to decide which of the specific cases of which you can copy from the best players. I've laid out some of the ones that have produced results on my end and what I've studied and that I've used with my players, and that other people like Jason Yee have used with their players and Kevin McKinnon have used with their players. that have produced the results that you see here. But you could either research some of the ones yourself or use what we have produced to get quicker results for yourself, which I think is actually much more efficient for you as a player. If you're a coach, then you would listen to all these details. But anyway, I'm going to stop it at that. I want to thank you for listening. I will see you next time.